We now come to the motion on the supplementary estimate for the Department for Business and Trade and the debate on the spending of the Department for Business and Trade. The debate will be led by Byrne. Minister to move the motion formally.
Formally.
The question is as on the order paper. Byrne.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and let me put on record my profound thanks both to the Backbench Business Committee for making time for this debate and indeed to the Liaison Committee for some of the arrangements that have made today possible. The Prime Minister, time and time again, has underlined that growth is the #1 priority. So I'm grateful that the House has agreed to put the Department for Growth under the microscope today, together with its accounts. And in readiness for today's debate, our committee has actually taken the precaution of going out and talking to hundreds and hundreds of businesses up and down the country, to trade unionists, to consumer groups, and indeed to laying in the House a report on what we heard from literally thousands of voices. Because in a way, that is what these accounts, that is what these estimates, that is what this Minister should be judged against when we consider this matter here today. So let me just make 3 points very quickly to get the debate started, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let me start with the point that struck me hardest as we were listening to business voices up and down the country, which is that for all of the divisions which divide us here in this House, there is actually a terrific unity of purpose amongst the business community in our country about not only it could be possible to become the fastest growing economy in the G7, but about some of the things in which we need to do in order to hit that target. So overwhelmingly, business want to see ministers do more to help grow the markets into which they sell. They want to see actually quite an ambitious reset with the European Union. They want to see fast-tracking of the free trade deals with Switzerland, with the GCC, with India. They want us absolutely to do everything possible to avoid the peril of tariffs from the United States. But they also want to see a complete transformation in the way in which we use public procurement to support businesses in this country. Minister after minister has said from that dispatch box that we're going to do more to buy British. Well, it is time to actually deliver on that promise. Second, businesses want the right workers for the roles that are available. Pretty much everywhere we went, the challenges of getting the right workforce in place were often the #1 priority that people heard from. It is true that we heard a lot about business concerns, about the rising cost of business. People are worried about the impact of the Employment Rights Bill and the National Minimum Wage changes and the national insurance increases all coming at the same time. But actually what I heard business say is that they could live with that if they could see the rapid development and publication of a growth plan along with the comprehensive spending review. So I regret the fact that that has kind of moved sideways, because actually what I think in the context of what this extremely hard-working minister is doing with the Employment Rights Bill, it would have been in his political interest if his colleagues were able to table that industrial strategy together with the growth plan sooner rather than later. I give way to one more friend.
Friend for giving way. I appreciate a fellow Hollovian giving way to me. I wonder if he would agree with me that actually part of the issues around employment, around skills as well, and actually part of the way we can support business as a government is ensure that young people have the skills to actually succeed in business and in all workplaces.
Well, my friend is 100% right. And what we heard loud and clear is business say to us that they wanted to see some quite radical and bold changes in the way that the skills levy was organised. The government has moved to introduce some flexibilities, and I think that business would want them to go further and faster. Third, we heard that business say that there is actually a pretty good environment when it comes to start-up finance, but there is a terrible environment in this country when it comes to scale-up finance. I'll return to that point in a moment. People want to see much stronger relationships between universities and businesses. We still don't have in this country something like the Fraunhofer Institutes in Germany, which have as their slogan that we are the R&D department for the Mittelstand. Where those knowledge transfer partnerships work, they are good, but they need to be far more prevalent than they are today. And then finally, we heard loud and clear businesses say The planning system needs a complete overhaul. The infrastructure that we have in this country is terrible, and we have absolutely got to drive down energy prices because right now so many businesses are being priced out of doing business because our energy prices are sky high. So actually, I think for all of our differences, there are some important points around which we can agree. We will, on the Select Committee, continue to judge ministers against many of the things that we heard from the business community as we travelled up and down the country. And let me just sort of flag 2 to 3 points that I think we really want to zero in on after I give way to my honourable friend.
I do thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. His point about energy costs and doing opening markets chimes with everything the ceramics industry are telling me that they are facing at the moment. But the point I wanted to pick up on with the honourable gentleman is he's absolutely right about the need for growth. But he's also, as well as being a wonderful chairman of his Select Committee, he is a doughty campaigner against inequality and inequity. And I'm sure he would share my sentiment that what we need to ensure is, whether it's in Birmingham or in Stoke-on-Trent, that those benefits of growth are felt in every community, particularly those communities who, sadly, under the last government, did not see the benefits that we deserved.
Well, my honourable friend is an extraordinary champion for the city that he represents, and he's been an extraordinary champion for the industry that has made that city great over the centuries. And he is absolutely right. When the industrial strategy is published, we have absolutely got to understand whether it is driving growth, whether it is driving better wages, whether it is transforming people's ability to earn a good life in every single corner of the country. We can't simply have a situation again, as we have had over the last 10 to 15 years, where 70% of the growth in wealth in our country has been concentrated in London and the South East. We have genuinely got to level up this country, and we have got to make sure that there is, to the extent that we can, pull together a cross-party consensus on the changes that are needed. Why? Because if we can get that cross-party consensus, we can genuinely redesign the economic institutions in our country in a way that is sustainable for the long term. Now, there are 3 particular issues, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I just wanted to flag because they all pose questions for the Minister when he's asking us to agree estimates today. The first is that there is a real worry amongst the small business community about whether they're going to be adequately supported by some of the changes that the Minister is helping drive through. We all know that what has bedevilled our economy for a long time is a long tail of underproductive, often smaller firms. And if we are to raise wages, if we're to raise the rate of economic growth, if we'd become the fastest growing economy in the G7, then we've got to transform the productivity rate of a lot of our small firms. Yet how is new technology going to be diffused through supply chains? How are we going to make sure that businesses that are medium-sized and small-sized are actually going to have the support to deploy new technology in a way that could change their business? I give way to one more friend.
Thank you, and I thank my right honourable friend for his for this chairmanship of the committee. On that point, I just want to clarify, based on the Prime Minister's recent announcements, does my honourable friend agree with me that it's really important to support defence SMEs given the increased defence spending?
Honourable friend is a brilliant member of the committee, and she makes a brilliant point this afternoon. This is a case in point. We know that we have got to come to a strategic culture, a defence mindset in this country, where our industry is able to innovate as fast as the battlefield changes. Yet we all know that there are, for example, defence manufacturers, or drone manufacturers in particular, which often struggle to get the working capital that they need to fund and grow their businesses month by month by month. And so we are going to have to change this. We are going to have to change the way that we support smaller businesses, and that means that we are going to have to transform access to finance. We have heard time and time again on our committee the way in which business leaders will come in and they will say, look, once a firm gets to a particular kind of size, they are bought in, snapped up and shipped out to the United States in particular, because we simply do not seem to be able to supply equity finance or debt finance between 50 million and 500 million. And so we have got to think anew about how we ensure that the British Business Bank, the National Wealth Fund, the private sector, some of the changes that are proposed to pension funds, all actually work together to completely revolutionise access to finance for businesses in this market. In the estimates, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is what looks like quite a welcome £414 million increase in funding for the British Business Bank. It looks like, although it's hard to decode it from the accounts, but it looks like about 127 million of that is a provision for bad debt. It would be good if the Minister could clarify that for us today. But we will continue to press through an inquiry that we will launch on our committee later in the year this need to completely transform access to finance. The final fear that I just wanted to flag, which is again becoming loud and clear for members on the committee, is that government just doesn't work for business in the way that it needs to. We have heard over and over and over again the way in which one department does something which completely undermines the work of another department, how one regulator does something which completely undermines what a different department or a different regulator is trying to do. What we can't yet see, either in the Green Paper on Industrial Strategy or indeed in any of the commentary about the estimates, is the way in which we knit government together in a wholly new way. Now, in the good old days, when I was Chief Secretary of the Treasury, what we were beginning to test, there was an awful lot more money than there was now. We certainly didn't have a debt interest bill of £100 billion a year, which is, of course, what it has now risen to, which is why so many difficult choices are having to be taken today. But what we were beginning to consider is how you genuinely created single funds that were pooled funds that came together from different government departments. Now, one of the challenges that we've got to reflect on in this House is that we reinforce silos in government. We don't reinforce joined-up government. And this estimates debate is a good example. We're considering the accounts of the Department for Business and Trade, but actually in an ideal world, we would also have the Department for Innovation, we would have the Treasury, we would have DEFRA, we would have a couple of other departments, and we would be actually asking ministers together, how are they working together in order to deliver a joined-up offer to our business community, because business hasn't got time to muck around to deal with all of the red tape, because they're trying to build a business. I give way to one honourable friend.
Joe Morris.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. I know he's given way a few times already. One of the things that I pick up speaking to businesses in my constituency is simply that young people, particularly those who want to remain in the most rural communities, simply cannot get to the jobs that they want to get to, that businesses have real trouble accessing, particularly in rural settings, a lot of the help that he's referring to. So does he believe that one of the particular sins of the past 14 years has been not only that the business climate has been unfriendly to business, but particularly to small rural businesses?
Well, my honourable friend is right, but we've got to look to the future now. What we have got to understand is how government is going to connect together and ensure, one, there's a transformation in regional transport, and two, there's a transformation in regional connectivity. So many parts of our country are bedevilled by a lack of internet connectivity, which means they can't get access to the kind of applications that might give them access to artificial intelligence, for example. They can't get access to international markets. They can't get access to the internet full stop. And so we've just got to think really quite boldly about how we join government together in quite a revolutionary way. The final point, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I just wanted to highlight is the Post Office. So when we look at these accounts in the round, we can see a 44.8 increase in these accounts up to nearly £6 billion a year. That is partly driven by 444 million for the British Business Bank, but it is overwhelmingly driven by about 1.3 billion pounds extra for the Post Office. That is because there is a good step that has been taken to increase funding for the Post Office Compensation Scheme. That money is still not going out the door fast enough. I accept that it is improved, and the committee will return with some tougher questions to ministers in the light of their response to our recent report. But the final point really I wanted to make, to urge both on the Minister and on his colleagues in the Treasury, is we cannot transform the Post Office into the organisation that it could be by dripping the funding for modernisation through to the organisation. What the Post Office needs is a proper 5 to 10 year funding plan so that it can genuinely become the organisation that it could be. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, when these accounts were published by the department, they were qualified and they were late. There are a number of problems that civil servants I know have got to work hard to iron out. We have asked the Permanent Secretary for monthly updates on how he is doing in bringing the kind of clarity that this House should expect. But I'll conclude by actually thanking the civil servants of the department for the extraordinary work they do. They are absolutely mission critical to the hopes for so many of us in this country, and for us indeed becoming the fastest growing economy in the G7.
I'm going to have to put backbench members on an immediate 5-minute time limit, which may well go down in due course. Alison Griffiths.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will do my very best to reduce the comments that I was going to make. I also want to pay tribute to the Chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee, the Honourable Member for Birmingham, Hodge Hill and Solihull North, for his very thoughtful comments which do reflect the considerations of our committee. Business is the lifeblood of our economy. It creates jobs, funds our public services and drives the success of our country. Yet, under this government, businesses are facing an onslaught of damaging policies that threaten growth, confidence and livelihoods. The government's £25 billion national insurance jobs tax is making it more expensive to hire workers. Their family business tax punishes those who drive local economies. And their 1970s-style employment laws are stifling business growth. The result, the fastest rate of job losses since 2008. So instead of supporting enterprise, this government is actively making it harder for businesses to thrive. The Department for Business and Trade's budget being slashed by 6% means less support at a time when firms need it most. The so-called Employment Rights Bill, or perhaps Unemployment Rights Bill, will cost the government £1 billion, while its Fair Work agency could add an astonishing £6.3 billion burden, costs that will inevitably be passed on to businesses and workers alike. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet. These policies have real consequences. Workers losing their jobs, families struggling with rising costs and businesses already being forced to shut their doors. The government claims to support growth, yet their policies are driving firms into significant financial distress, with over 632,000 businesses now at risk, a 32% increase in just 1 year. The irony is that Britain remains an attractive place to invest. The PwC CEO survey ranked us second only to the United States. But alas, that survey took place before the budget. A strong economy depends on strong business confidence, yet confidence in this government's economic management has been shattered. Businesses no longer trust that the government has a clear strategy for growth, something that the Honourable Member for Birmingham has already mentioned. The numbers speak for themselves. More than 200 leading hospitality and retail firms have warned that government policies will force them to cut jobs and scale back investment. Businesses face ever-changing regulations, increasing tax burdens and a government that appears out of touch with their needs.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Of course I'll give way.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. She refers to the increase in regulation. The government's Employment Rights Bill, which I have in my hand, is 192 pages. Only this week, government amendments totalling 216 pages have been tabled for this House to consider in 2 days next week. That presents any business with a vast quantity of new regulation to consider, does it not?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and he's absolutely right. The time that we have next week to consider this number of amendments seems wholly inadequate. So businesses are facing ever-changing regulations, increasing tax burdens. But many have said that they were misled, duped, into believing that this government was pro-business, when its actions tell a very different story. Analysis by the Nuffield Trust found that if the Fair Work Agency for social care workers were to increase wages to match the NHS agenda for change band 3, the cost could be as high as £6.3 billion, including an increase to the real living wage costing £2.2 billion, another measure in the out-of-touch Employment Rights Bill. It's as if the 32 members of the Cabinet have a very limited understanding of the private sector and business as a whole. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, business owners, entrepreneurs and workers do not need more red tape and tax hikes. They need a government that understands that growth doesn't come from the state dictating terms, but from unleashing the potential of enterprise. They need policies that encourage investment, not deter it. Businesses in my constituency of Bognor, Regis and Littlehampton are already struggling with the global impacts on their business environment, let alone the challenges at home. The Day One rights, as given by the Employment Rights Bill, give the presumption of innocence to workers and the presumption of malevolent intent to employers. The reality is that neither is correct. The government needs to understand that when business thrives, Britain thrives. That is the only way we will restore confidence, protect jobs and secure a growing economy.
Gregor Poynton.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I speak today as a member of the Business and Trade Committee and as the MP for Livingston constituency, determined to see this department play its vital part in delivering the government's #1 mission of economic growth and economic renewal, all underpinned by a pro-worker, pro-business approach. One of the crucial elements in delivering that mission is the delivery of a modern and ambitious industrial strategy, and it is towards that industrial strategy I will primarily address my remarks today. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is my belief that the UK economy is a moment of peril. 14 Tory years of underfunding, instability and a lack of investment in our people and our infrastructure has left us with anaemic growth. If we do not get the next few years right, this trend will continue, despite the best efforts of our business leaders and our workers. However, I also see opportunity. As the Business and Trade Committee went round the country gathering evidence for this report, speaking to those with a stake in our economy, from sole traders to global corporates to trade unions to academics, time after time after time, we heard and saw the same thing: the huge optimism and potential for our country and the businesses that power it. But what they wanted from government was stability, predictability and coherence. And if we as a government can provide that, they believe they could unleash our country's potential. There was universal positivity about the government's focus around an industrial strategy, believing it will drive investment, create high-quality jobs and ensure businesses, including in my own Livingston constituency, thrive in the economy of the future. Because economic prosperity does not happen by accident. It takes businesses, business leaders and workers. It requires vision, leadership and a government willing to invest in the industries that will power our future. The Green Paper sets out how the strategy will support growth sectors, drive productivity and ensure that Britain remains a world leader in financial services, fintech, manufacturing, green technology, life sciences and more. These are not just abstract commitments. They have tangible benefits to people and businesses in my constituency of Livingston and across Scotland and the wider UK. Take, for example, the significant opportunities in Scotland's renewable sector. With the right industrial strategy, we can fully harness the nation's potential in on- and offshore wind, hydrogen production, sustainable aviation fuel and battery technology. This is about well-paid, secure, future-facing employment across Livingston constituency and elsewhere that benefits workers, families and communities alike. Madam Deputy Speaker, contrast this approach by DBT and the wider Labour Government, rooted in long-term strategy and tangible investment, with the record of the SNP Scottish Government over the past 18 years. It is frankly staggering that Scotland, a country with a truly extraordinary economic potential, not least in the area of renewable energy, still lacks a dedicated industrial strategy. Not only that, under successive First Ministers, businesses of all sizes were shunned and the growing concerns about Scottish Government economic policy ignored. Go ahead, yeah, more I'd like to hear it.
Chris Law.
I'm glad you'd like to hear it. It's breathtaking what I've just heard. I'd just like to remind the honourable gentleman that Scotland's economy is one of the best performing parts of the UK. And indeed, since 2007, Scotland's GDP per person has grown by 10.5%, outperforming the UK's 6.5%, while productivity has risen at an annual rate of 1%. Annually, so I'd be really curious to find out what figures he's working on, because it's a very topsy-turvy world when Scotland's got the highest rate of foreign direct investment in the UK the last 9 years in a row outside of London.
I'm afraid my honourable member often falls into the trap of thinking being just a little bit better than the Tories is good enough for Scotland. I see Scotland as much more than that. While this government is providing businesses with the certainty they need to plan for the future, the SNP has been content to manage decline without a plan to stimulate growth or attract investment. They failed on delivering green jobs, despite grand promises on renewable energy that never materialised, and failed to support manufacturing, leaving companies without backing too. They contrast that with the UK Labour Government's crucial action to protect jobs and investment at Grangemouth, a site of huge economic importance to Scotland. The Prime Minister's announcement of £200 million from the National Wealth Fund represent a clear and unequivocal commitment to ensuring that Grangemouth remains a hub of economic and industrial activity. This investment will not only safeguard existing jobs, but unlock new opportunities in green energy and advanced manufacturing. That's government working in the interests of business, of workers and our long-term prosperity. And it's that spirit, I hope and believe, that Grangemouth will find a central part in DBT's industrial strategy and the thinking and the work of the department for years to come. The SNP, Scottish Government and previous Tory governments had years to act, but failed to do so. They've squandered opportunities and failed to plan for Grangemouth or for Scotland's economic future. But this Labour Government has stepped up and secured a future for Grangemouth workers, providing them with a training guarantee and working with industry partners to build long-term resilience for the site. Madam Deputy Speaker, the contrast could not be sharper. I look forward to working with my dedicated and talented collegiate committee colleagues across all parties as we continue to scrutinise the work of the department. This government is committed to driving growth and building an economy that works for everyone. The opportunity to get ahead is what everyone wants for their family. That's why I'm in politics, driven to make sure that no one in this country is held back by their circumstances. I believe a modern industrial strategy is key to making that happen.
With a reduction to 4 minutes in time, Peter Fortune.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I regularly meet with business owners, big and small, across the Bromley and Biggin Hill constituency. The story is the same no matter who I talk to, be it big franchisees, independent care providers or small family-owned startups. British businesses do not feel supported by this Labour government. Instead, they feel hamstrung by Labour's tax rises and red tape. The Department for Business and Trade's budget may be over £3.3 billion, but ask any business and they'll say things are getting worse, not better under Labour. I've lost count of the number of local enterprises who have told me that they've stopped recruiting, that they're making redundancies, they're delaying investment and increasing prices, all after Labour's tax-raising budget. And this shouldn't come as a surprise to the government. Hiking employers' national insurance contributions by £25 billion will cost jobs. Imposing reams of new employment red tape will deter businesses from hiring. Now, there may only be one cabinet member who started their own business, but this is simple stuff. If you make it more expensive and difficult to hire and grow, businesses will not hire or grow. And this is what an anti-business, anti-growth government looks like. Labour's policies are causing economic growth to slow down, unemployment to rise fast, and inflation to increase again. Madam Deputy Speaker, the constituency of Bromley and Biggin Hill has nearly 4,800 small businesses. They are the lifeblood of the local economy. If they thrive, our community succeeds. If they fail, our community suffers. But like small businesses across the country, Labour's making their job harder. A new survey by the Federation of Small Businesses shows that a third of small employers plan to cut jobs, with 9 in 10 worried about Labour's employment rights bill. Small business confidence has also fallen to a record low because of the pandemic, with confidence among London's small firms plummeting more than any other English region. Madam Deputy Speaker, this Labour government isn't helping businesses deliver economic growth. Instead, they're taxing them to the very brink.
Sarah Edwards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee, I'm pleased to share our committee's priorities for this Parliament and how the evidence that we have gathered has shaped our work plan. Recently, I hosted a roundtable in Tamworth with local businesses, And given our close relationship with the West Midlands Combined Authority, I also invited our Mayor, Richard Parker, to discuss his plans for skills and development across the region. One of the main themes that came through in our discussion was the challenges that business face in finding the right workers. With the transition to a greener, more digital economy, businesses need a skilled workforce. The Minister's recent announcement to make apprenticeships shorter, more agile and tailored to business needs directly responds to what we heard across the country. In Tamworth, I also spoke with Kier Construction and Simpson Strong Tie to explore how we can encourage young people, and especially women, to consider the construction sector. With clearer pathways, we can ensure that skills needed to support economic growth and deliver the housing and infrastructure that our country needs are in place. A great example of regional success is Cornerstone Partnership, a social housing developer in Tamworth. And with support from the Combined Authority, they've been able to access finance through loans, demonstrating how devolved powers can direct resources effectively. However, challenges still remain for smaller businesses that struggle to access finance from institutions like the British Business Bank, and they face barriers when exporting. So I would like to hear from the Minister a little bit more about how businesses will be enabled to access this additional £415 million for the British Business Bank. One of the other businesses that I spoke to in my constituency was Pychem, a small company that started with 5 employees and now exports globally from its base in Tamworth. In just over a decade, they have grown to over 30 employees. Despite this success, they face long waits for suitable industrial units, and many businesses that I've spoken with have similarly had a situation where they could not find mid-range industrial space to grow into. Small and medium-sized enterprises are the backbone of our economy, making up 99.8% of all private sector businesses. Yet these businesses are under immense pressure, especially with rising costs and energy challenges. The energy crisis has hit businesses hard, particularly in sectors like hospitality. I hear time and time again how energy bills are forcing businesses to close. The good news is that as of December 2024, the Energy Ombudsman can now represent businesses with up to 50 employees, expanding their reach beyond just micro businesses. And I'm currently working with them on behalf of one of my micro businesses who have faced unfair backbilling practices by their energy supplier. Our high streets have been affected by business closures, but in Tamworth we've embraced our heritage as a drive for regeneration. Our unique selling point is our history and heritage, and using this to bring businesses back to the town. With our Grade 1 listed St Edith's Church and at Tamworth Castle as key drivers of growth, local businesses have already collaborated on events like the Athelstan 1100 Festival, which brought the community together and attracted visitors. With the government's £270 million funding for Arts Everywhere programme, towns like Tamworth can continue to showcase their heritage, support local businesses and regenerate their town centres. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, there is much more to discuss, but whether it's improving access to finance, supporting digital transformation or helping businesses to export, with the right support we can achieve sustained growth, but we must stay agile in the face of unpredictable global contexts.
John Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I rise as well as a member of the Select Committee. Perhaps no other department impacts the lives of so many Britons. The economy affects each and every one of us. And when the government's #1 priority is the fastest sustained economic growth in the G7, then, to use football parlance, the Chancellor is the midfield general and the Department of Business and Trade is the big striker in the opposition box. The rest of us, all of us, have a seat on the terraces. But, oh dear, we've barely kicked off and we're pinned in our own half. So where is business confidence when less than a quarter of businesses who cheered Labour on, signing a letter ahead of the election, are still waving their red scarves? One said they now felt duped. What of the financial backup? The eye-catching headline figure in the supplementary estimates is that the department was allocated a total funding increase of £1.8 billion, yet that money is largely earmarked for post office compensation. It's absolutely right and proper that those victims be compensated and quickly. But there should be no pretence that this money is a shot in the arm for DBT. While an extra £414 million for the British Business Bank in the estimates is good news, is it enough? This country lacks not for start-ups, but for scale-ups. And we hear time and again that lack of finance from risk-averse banks is the block. Scale matters. The Business and Trade Committee heard only yesterday that while work by the previous government had created an ideal environment for the emerging technology of quantum computing, Britain has earmarked a few billion for the sector. Impressive until you hear that the United States is injecting over $50 billion, and their R&D spend alone is perhaps 7 times our total budget in this field. Madam Deputy Speaker, no government is ever in full control of events, and the storms of war are howling. Even as this government's industrial strategy is being shaped, defence is now the utmost priority. If, as a nation, we are not secure, then we are not a nation. Madam Deputy Speaker, wars are fought in trenches and on myriad battlefields, but they are won in the boardrooms and on the shop floors and shipyards of industry. Economic growth, then, is a key arrow in the British quiver. But do these estimates give us hope for growth? Rather than confidently striking out for new global deals, Britain today looks like a cork in a storm-tossed sea, at the mercy of events and not their master. On a Business and Trade Committee visit to Brussels, we explored what the government might expect of its much vaunted reset of relations. Troublingly, Britain lacks for any clear definition of its ask beyond warm words about defence and security. Yet the EU, good protectionists that they are, already have an invoice drawn up. We have acceded to the CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership. Not easy to say, especially with these teeth. It is a bloc of over 500 million people and includes countries such as Australia, Canada, Japan, Singapore, economies which are ripe to bloom such as Vietnam and Malaysia, in contrast to the sunset economies of Europe with sclerotic growth. Yet we are told trade deals tick up British GDP only marginally. We lack ambition, because this is based on previous... Happy to give way, thank you.
Alison Griffiths. I just wanted to follow up on your comment on international trade and to ask you whether you would agree that the government currently lacks the capability to support businesses appropriately in international trade.
Well, thank you for that intervention, and I agree completely with my honourable friend that much more needs to be done on international trade. As I said, I think we lack ambition in this field because we base so much of what we expect on previous deals, and frankly there's never been a deal like CPTPP or the putative deals with India and the dripping roast that is a US free trade deal. Department of Business and Trade need to step up, not be beaten before we even start. Growth is the destination we all in this House should agree on. The path there is where the disputes lie. We are in an economic relegation zone after a dud budget. Can the Department of Business and Trade help pull off the shock result that we all need? Britain's got talent, Madam Deputy Speaker. Department of Business and Trade can boost it.
Speaker, as a member of the Business and Trade Committee, I welcome this debate and looking at our priorities for the future. SMEs make up 99.9% of British businesses, employing over 60 million people. As a daughter of a greengrocers, my speech will focus on supporting SMEs to grow our economy. It is crucial that the government's plan in delivering long-term growth should include digital inclusion, improving financial literacy, improving uptake on accessing finance, workforce reskilling, and expanding exports, leading to growth capabilities of SMEs. Digital exclusion is not just a social problem, but it's an economic one as well. The government's own digital skills plans recognise that businesses and workers must be equipped with digital capabilities to drive growth. Yet millions of adults and thousands of businesses lack the digital skills and financial literacy needed to compete in both today and tomorrow's economy. However, they face barriers to digital adoption, including costs, lack of awareness, and the difficulty of accessing government support. I've spoken to several businesses in Dudley, and I recently held a networking event, and small businesses repeatedly said they don't have the time to learn digital skills, use social media as part of their marketing strategy, and are walking into the dark. SMEs also face barriers in accessing finance to scale up and enter new markets abroad. I support the Business and Trade Committee's priorities, and will the Department agree to spend on expanding financial initiatives Governments must make grants, R&D tax relief, digital adoption funding easier to access, especially for SMEs outside London and big cities. Focus on financial literacy so businesses can thrive. Streamline public procedure so as too many tech SMEs struggle to win public sector contracts due to the overly complex processes. Initiatives for business should access finance, whether it's seed money or scaling up to export. Lastly, can the government commit on maximising opportunity for the industrial strategy for all towns like Dudley to ensure that no town is left behind on this journey for economic prosperity?
A 3-minute time limit. Chris Law.
Madam Deputy Speaker, obviously increasing investment in Scotland's economy is crucial to delivering the SNP government's priorities, which are improving public services, supporting the thriving economy, tackling the climate emergency and eradicating child poverty. I just want to put this back on record again, just to be very clear about facts in this House. Scotland's economy is one of the best performing parts of the UK. It's outgrown GDP by 50% compared to the rest of the UK since 2007, and productivity is an average rate of 1.1%. It's also vital that spending of the Department of Business and Trade complements the Scottish Government's efforts to help increase investment and ensure economic prosperity. Increasing trade and attracting inward investment are critical for Scotland. In 2023, Scotland secured a record number of foreign direct investment projects, maintaining its position as the top performing UK area outside London for the 9th year running. According to Ernst Young's annual analysis, 142 FDI projects are secured in Scotland, double the UK's growth rate. Scotland, Madam Deputy Speaker, is clearly the best place to invest in these islands. However, this success must not be jeopardised by decisions from the UK Government. Obviously, the pressure that employers are feeling around national insurance is negatively impacting Scottish businesses, limiting their capacity to contribute to the economy. This tax on jobs undermines efforts to support businesses, entrepreneurs and investment. Labour's political choice to remain outside the EU, single market and customs union is costing the UK billions every year. Brexit's a decision Scotland never voted for, continues to hurt Scottish businesses, trade opportunities and economic prospects. A January 2025 analysis by the Office of Chief Economic Advisor estimates Brexit trade barriers could cost Scotland £4 billion, with exports potentially down 7.2% or £3 billion compared to EU membership. Scotland's future therefore lies in the EU and the European single market, and the Labour Government must acknowledge that this is driving down investment and growth as we currently stand outside of the EU. Madam Deputy Speaker, this should also crystallise the potential trade war being initiated by President Trump as part of the America First trade policy. Free trade, a long-established principle, is now under significant strain, bringing uncertainty for trade with the USA and other nations imposing tariffs. I would speak about the vulnerable industry in whisky, which needs to be revisited. I only heard today that actually you're removing the idea of making English whisky a single malt, so that's pleased to hear. Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll finish by saying UK must recognise the value of Scotland's industries and potential emerging sectors. Scotland's at the forefront of energy transition and cutting-edge technologies, presenting substantial opportunities for future growth. And I look to hear more about investments into Scotland, particularly in this sector. Thank you.
Amanda Martin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was interesting to hear from my honourable friend from Dumfries and Galloway about the importance of shipyards. Portsmouth was once a fantastic shipbuilding city from 1511 to 2014, with a strong tradition in building some of the greatest ships, playing its part in repairing and refitting over 1,600 ships during the First World War. And after Labour's commitment in 1998 to build Invincible-class aircraft carriers, in 2011, Pompey shipbuilders played a crucial role in the construction of the 2 new aircraft carriers by helping build 6,000-ton sections of the midship of HMS Queen Elizabeth. Madam Deputy Speaker, a ship I'm proud to say that my son is currently serving on. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, like so many other parts of this country, Portsmouth has been let down when, under the previous government, despite being the home of the Royal Navy, the heart and industry from my city of shipbuilding was cut away. And in 2014, shipbuilding was taken from Portsmouth, and it's left a deep scar. The answer to the industrial industry being removed was to have a minister for Portsmouth. Madam Deputy Speaker, despite having 3 token ministers for Portsmouth given to us under the last government, charged with bringing economic growth to the city, Portsmouth under the Tories was failed again and again and again. 10,000 adults in Portsmouth North are living on the minimum wage, a stark reality showing a lack of economic growth and strategy in my city to ensure jobs for local people. As Nelson once said, England expects, and Madam Deputy Speaker, Portsmouth expects. It is refreshing to see a government, and a Labour government, identifying the need for industrial strategy across the country. And whilst we may not return shipbuilding in its same volume, and whilst we may be in the South East, we are unique, and we need a strategy and action. So can I ask the Minister to outline what difference he sees in this government's modern industrial strategy to those that have been tried, or should I say in the case of my city, not tried, so that my city and the people in it can see a future of growth, investment, security, well-paid jobs for themselves, their families and future generations.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This government was elected 8 months ago with a promise to go for growth. But so far, most of their policies seem designed to make life more difficult for business. Their £25 billion national insurance jobs tax is a direct assault on the businesses that create jobs. The increase in capital gains tax, the introduction of the family business tax, the family farm tax, all discourage entrepreneurship. And their 1970s-style employment laws are slowing business growth and discouraging job creation. Labour's proposed employment rights bill will increase costs to businesses by £5 billion, borne mostly by small businesses. Take day one rights. If after less than 1 week it becomes apparent that a new employee is the wrong fit for your business, a complicated process must be followed to dismiss them. Now, speaking as a former, though fully qualified solicitor, I know that the businesses that this will hit hardest are the ones with no HR department. Get the process wrong and you could be taken to court for unfair dismissal. Another example is the obligation for the employer to notify an employee in writing that they have the right to join a trade union. Is this something that you would reasonably expect from your local publican or the proprietor of a family newsagent? In what world is this really going to occur? And yet, if it doesn't occur, these small businesses will be on the hook for an additional 4 weeks' salary in damages. This will have brutal consequences for very many micro businesses and will deter them from employing people. The bill also establishes an advisory board for the enforcement of labour market rules. This will be a body that advises the Secretary of State on matters relating to the labour market. This board is an expensive and pointless exercise. The Secretary of State has plenty of avenues to collect advice already. There will be a complicated process for selecting members of the panel, which will consume considerable amounts of civil service time and money. The members of the board will be paid hundreds of pounds a day. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a sham process designed to allow the Secretary of State to hand out sinecures in order to receive advice on strategy from his union friends that he could have got for free. The first instinct of this 1970s-style old Labour government is to regulate, to stifle innovation and to back the unions over business every time. We Conservatives will stand up for business and the people who make this economy work and will continue to champion its success.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you and good evening, Madam Deputy Speaker. I do hope that the member for Portsmouth North will pass on my thanks to her son for his service. I do wonder how Lord Nelson would feel about the increasing necessity with which we must align with our English Channel neighbours. Labour's national insurance hike will hit small businesses, social care providers and local GP services across the country. In my rural constituency of Tewkesbury, this national insurance rise will have dire consequences for its many historic villages and towns. Increasingly in recent years, small businesses have been forced out of our historic high streets and replaced by soulless international chain stores and restaurants with the resources to cope with inflation. Over time, our high streets are losing their unique character. Amongst those small businesses that will suffer are pubs. Pubs and breweries generate approximately £15 billion of tax revenues each year. According to UK Hospitality, The economic value of the hospitality industry in Tewkesbury constituency is worth £67 million per year. Last month, I visited the Plough in Prestbury, where I spoke with the landlord Emma. She told me that this one establishment is worth £100,000 per year to HMRC, but having diversified and restructured to the nth degree, she is now accumulating debt to stay solvent. This pub is also her home. How does the government expect to accrue revenue if it taxes such businesses to oblivion? Small local businesses are vital to the unique identities of rural high streets across the country. They are often the backbone of local economies, and it's important we do not inadvertently force them to the wall. This single policy will have such an outsized impact. I hope the government will review this decision with economic growth in mind.
To wind up for the Liberal Democrats, Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I offer my thanks to the Chair of the Business and Trade Select Committee for delivering a powerful opening speech and for securing this important debate. I absolutely agree with him that public procurement should be more focused to be buying British, and completely agree with him that access for finance needs to be improved sooner rather than later so that our defence industries can upskill and respond to what is going to be a growing need. The Department for Business and Trade is synonymous with what Britain truly needs. Britain needs growth. Most of us in this chamber will agree with that. Businesses need confidence in the UK as a place to invest. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have a government that is staring stagnation in the face, failing to learn from the lessons from the Conservative Party's economic vandalism that stretched household finances to the brink, and now businesses are left bracing for further pain once the Chancellor's job tax comes into force. I and many others are particularly concerned about the impact on the hospitality sector of the Great British Pub. Last Saturday in my constituency in Wokingham, I visited the Station Tap. There's been a pub on that site for 150 years. In between pulling one of the worst ever pints in my life, they shared some of their concerns about the budget. The national insurance contribution rise for just this one pub will add an annual £12,000 cost to their business every year. It is no small wonder that in a British Chamber of Commerce survey, 82% of firms surveyed say that national insurance contributions rises will impact their business, forcing them to change their plans, to make redundancies, and stop investing in people and in growth. National insurance, NICS, was not the only issue with the budget that they had raised. It is overwhelmingly obvious that business rates are broken, and the Station Tap owners asked me to give a clear message to the Minister. They asked me to share that it is outdated, that it needs meaningful reform, and most importantly, it needs to be done sooner rather than later. We would not be in a position where I have a new business seemingly every week raising this point if the government were getting on with the work quickly. They're especially concerned about the planned reduction in relief for hospitality. It could cost independent publicans £3,000 to £5,000 a year. Other businesses in Wokingham warned that the loss of the relief could see their businesses pushed to the brink of survival. Wokingham has some of the best pubs in the country. The Queen's Head, the Queen's Oak, the Duke's Head, the Walter Arms, to name just a few. The government should be championing them. What steps is the government taking to monitor the impact of the business rate relief reduction and the national insurance contribution rise on pubs? If the Minister's monitoring reveals that this government's policy are leading to higher rates of business closure or are deterring investment, will they implore the Treasury to reverse the taxes and instead tax the big banks, implement a proper tax on oil and gas super profits, and tackle tax avoidance by properly investing in HMRC. Madam Deputy Speaker, people across the UK are watching with concern as the United States engages in economic sabotage with the global economy. In the UK, Britain's steel sector is bracing for the pain of Trump's tariffs, which are set to be applied next week. This will negatively impact on manufacturers, forcing price rises or reduced sales to the United States. Can the Minister urgently update the House on his department's efforts to ensure the UK is excluded from the steel and aluminium tariffs? It would also be helpful to understand that if these tariffs are applied, what retaliatory action would the government take? And if this will include some action against Elon Musk's Tesla. Nobody wants a trade war. It is bad for business, consumers and for diplomatic relations. But we must ensure that if we are to be attacked, that we simply don't take it on the chin. It's why I admire the confidence of our great Commonwealth and NATO ally Canada. Madam Deputy Speaker, Donald Trump is trying to undo our Western alliance, threatening to annex a nation who shares our king, and is seeking to weaken their economy as a staging ground for that proposed takeover. The Canadian Prime Minister and the leader of His Majesty's opposition in Canada are united in wanting to be around a negotiating table to get the deal done with the UK as soon as possible. As for Canada becoming a 51st state of the USA, I don't know any Canadians who are interested in that. We need to be...
Can I remind the Shadow Spokesman to bring his remarks to a close so that we do have time to hear from the Minister and the Shadow Minister?
Thank you very much. We need to take action to deepen bilateral trade with Canada. Does the Minister share Canada's sentiment to strengthen our economies? Does he agree that we need to take tougher action to stand up for our Canadian friends? Will the UK return to the negotiating table and start working on a trade deal with Canada as soon as possible? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I shall try and be short and snappy and start by congratulating the Honourable Member, Right Honourable Member for Hodge Hill and Solihull North for securing this afternoon's debate, and it has allowed many voices to articulate the concerns that they're hearing from businesses in their constituency, and it's enabled many members to talk about the very great importance of growth. Growth is essential. We talk about the importance of defence and 2.5% spending on it increasing to 2.7% and up to 3%, but of course we want the economy to grow at the same time. And in the estimates that we see before us today, the Secretary of State has laid out the ambitious goals that he has for his department, delivering a comprehensive industrial strategy. Now, I simply ask, Madam Deputy Speaker, 8 months in, when will businesses see that? Secondly, a plan to provide small businesses with tools and support. I simply ask, 8 months in, when will small businesses see that? Thirdly, a trade strategy that recognises that high-quality trade deals are necessary to give businesses access to international markets, to boost jobs and deliver economic growth here. And I simply ask, when will businesses see a change on that front? And fourth, delivering sweeping changes to employment law. And there, sadly, Madam Deputy Speaker, businesses have seen that. They have seen that the sweeping changes that are outlined in the Employment Rights Bill that we'll be scrutinising next week actually take us back to 1970s-style employment laws, adding £1 billion in cost just to the government's own cost base. And I wonder, Madam Deputy Speaker, if you might at the end share a few words on whether in speaking, it would have been appropriate for those who receive contributions from unions to declare them in this debate. I think we've had an excellent debate, but I didn't hear any declarations of interest. I heard from our benches some excellent contributions from the member for Bognor, Regis and Littlehampton, from Bromley and Biggin Hill, from Dumfries and Galloway, and from Bridgwater, in which they outlined and summarised the challenges that businesses are feeling up and down this country. And then in other contributions from Tamworth, from Dudley, from Livingston, from Portsmouth North, from Dundee, Tewkesbury and Wokingham, we heard a range of different concerns that real businesses that create the wealth of this country are feeling. Turning to trade, Madam Deputy Speaker, I note that in these supplementary estimates, the Department marks an increase in subhead A4. The account that includes first and foremost the Trade Policy Implementation and Negotiations Group. It also explains in the note that this increase is owing to an international reorganisation within DBT, which has brought our international strategy and development teams into this group from strategy and investment. So strategy and investment, meanwhile, have been cut by almost the same amount, by which this account has been increased. So I'm just wondering whether there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors going on there in terms of the amount that is being dedicated to increasing trade, because increasing trade is one of the key routes to economic growth, Madam Deputy Speaker. Our constituent businesses would really benefit for further opening of free trade. I note very welcome news that the Prime Minister talked to the President of America about a free trade agreement last week. But as at the end of January, Madam Deputy Speaker, no official or minister from the department had made any attempt to engage with the US administration on trade. And the department has chosen to abandon the position of chief trade negotiator, which was either deliberate self-harm or willful incompetence. And there was almost no public recognition by the department or its ministers of the UK's accession to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which does indeed trip off the tongue. There is growing evidence that instead of investing in these opportunities, the US, Canada, the fast-growing markets of Asia, the government is reverting to its ideological safeguard, relying on Brussels by developing a Trojan horse strategy to realign the UK with the European Union. So, in summary, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the department actually being given the tools that it needs to deliver on trade deals? If the government claims to have set their sights higher, shouldn't the resources reflect that? I worry we're seeing a classic example of big words, big ambitions, just saying the word growth, but nothing that actually delivers growth. It is now 8 months to the day since those on the benches opposite entered government. How many businesses in this country can actually say that things have got better for them in these last 8 months? How many are more confident? How many can say that they expect the trade situation facing the United Kingdom to improve?
Minister, Justin.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to thank my right honourable friend, the member for Birmingham, Hodge, Hill and Solihull North, and indeed the honourable member for Dumfries and Galloway for securing this debate and the work that they do on the Business and Trade Select Committee. I think the honourable member for Dumfries and Galloway littered his speech with football analogies to the extent I wondered if, Madam Deputy Speaker, you were going to show a red card at some point. But apparently not. Amongst his many criticisms of the government, all I would say is that we're not even at half-time yet, so let's wait till we get to the end of the match. But I think there were a number of very important and interesting contributions today. I'll try and address as many of them as I can in the time that I've got. It is clear that the department is central for driving economic growth, ensuring we remain competitive on the global stage and making work pay for everyone. The growth mission of this government has been our top priority since day one of taking office, because we understand without economic growth we cannot invest in public services, nor can we raise living standards for hard-working families. To secure the growth that we need, we are guided by 4 key principles: building long-term stability, renewing our commitment to free and fair trade, easing the investor journey and being a strategic growth-focused state. And we have wasted no time in getting to work on this and fixing the foundations of the economy. My department has been at the forefront of these efforts, and I will try and explain some of the things that we have done as I answer the points that have been made during the debate. And I'll start with the comments from the Select Committee Chair, and I was very pleased to hear that he found a terrific unity of purpose on the government's ambitions for growth. That is something that we are very pleased to hear, and I too would join him in paying tribute to the civil servants who are helping us deliver that. He raised a number of very important points. Talked about getting the right workforce, as did my honourable friend, the member for Tamworth. And in terms of that, we are having a levy-funded growth and skills offer, which we believe will deliver greater flexibility for learners and employers. This will be aligned with our industrial strategy, creating the routes that we want to see into good, skilled jobs in growing industries. As a first step, we will include shorter duration and foundation apprenticeships in targeted sectors, helping more people learn new high-quality skills at work, fueling innovation in businesses across the country, and providing high-quality entry pathways for young people. We will be reducing the apprenticeship minimum duration in legislation to 8 months so that shorter apprenticeships are possible from August 2025. Trailblazer apprenticeships in green energy, healthcare and film and TV production will be amongst the first to be able to take advantage of these new offers. And in response to calls from employers, assessment plans will now be less burdensome, focusing on the must-haves for occupational competency rather than testing every knowledge, skill or behaviour. Now, the Chairman of the Select Committee also made, I think, a very important point, something that I've been looking at very carefully, about how we harmonise regulation, make sure that we haven't got different departments talking to different people and saying different things, how we really streamline and make sure that there is a cohesive environment for businesses to invest and grow in. He'll be pleased to know that I have been meeting with other departments, particularly Lord Valence, who's looking particularly in this area in terms of innovation. And of course, we now have government growth boards which are looking at the missions that this government are doing to ensure that we do have that cross-departmental grip on matters. He also, along with the honourable friend members for Dudley and Tamworth, asked about how we can use the British Business Bank to help businesses access finance, and that is something that we are absolutely looking very closely at. It is, of course, operationally independent, but we're working with them to ensure businesses are able to navigate the market better and give them clearer information on options available to them. And there is a pilot package to encourage tech adoption for SMEs. And of course, the British Growth Partnership, we hope, will get that pension fund investment into some of the UK's fastest growing companies. The Select Committee Chair did also ask specifically about this figure of £126.7 million. And my understanding is that is as a result of a re-evaluation of the investment portfolio that the department has. That is a standard process. I'm happy to put him in touch with officials for a more detailed explanation on that if he requires it. Honourable friend the member for Grangemouth asked, honourable friend the member for Livingston asked about the Grangemouth refinery, and of course it is deeply regrettable that we've had to step in and put some plans in place there. But there is £100 million for the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal, which will help boost the local economy. A £1.5 million project as well to look at credible long-term industrial options for the site, which we expect to report in the spring. And of course, the National Wealth Fund will provide nearly £200 million of growth opportunities for the area. My honourable friend, the member for Portsmouth, I think highlighted really the devastating impact that a lack of a strategy can have on a community of hers in Portsmouth North. And also join opposition members in thanking her son for his service in defence of our nation. But she will be pleased to know that our industrial strategy green paper, Invest 2035, sets out the 8 key growth-driving sectors we want to channel investment and support to over the long term. We want to unleash the full potential of these priority sectors to spur growth, spread wealth and drive up employment across all 4 nations of the UK. Each of the industries will have its own sector plan, setting out how we intend to support businesses to build on existing successes and unlock new opportunities. These sector plans are being designed in partnership with business, devolved governments, regions and other key parties. The industrial strategy, alongside sector plans for the growth-driving sectors, will be published later this year, aligned to the multi-year spending review.
I thank the Minister for giving way. He's making an excellent speech setting out the ambitious plans this government has. Whilst he's looking at the industrial strategy for those 8 growth areas, can I make a pitch for him to remember those foundational industries that sit below that, including ceramics? Because without the ceramics, without the refractories, without those foundational industries, delivering the growth that the department wants in those 8 high growth areas will simply be impossible.
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I think I knew as soon as he rose to speak he would raise the ceramics industry. Such is his record of championing that industry, and I will certainly pass his comments back to the relevant minister. I'll give way one more time.
Thank you for giving way. I have personally experienced the power working in industry of partnership between government and industry, where government sets clear, powerful goals and then collaborates with industry to deliver them. That has, in my experience, really fueled innovation and is a key aspect to us delivering the growth that we desire at the moment. So does the Minister agree with me that partnership between industry, where government sets goals and then we work together to deliver them, is key to delivering a successful industrial strategy?
I absolutely agree with my humble friend, and that is indeed what we are attempting to deliver with our industrial strategy. Engagement is continuing with businesses in respect of that. Publication is, I believe, going to be in late spring, and we will ensure that it is a very successful launch. I will draw my comments to a conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker. I will just acknowledge the barrage of criticism from the benches opposite on the Employment Rights Bill, and at that point I will of course refer to my register of interests just to make sure the Shadow Minister is not disappointed. No doubt we will debate that in more detail next week, but I do hope that opposition members have actually read the bill by that point, because they kept talking about going back to the 1970s, and actually the legislation that is being repealed in that bill is from 2023 and 2016, so actually we're probably going back to 2015 at best. So I hope they get some better lines before we get to report stage. So in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are making the UK a more attractive and easier place to invest and do business for our expanded Office for Investment. Our sectors of the future are being emboldened through our modern industrial strategy, ensuring we have the right environment and skills for them to innovate, invest and create clean growth. Small and medium-sized businesses are being supported with the capital and conditions they need to thrive, and millions of employees are being afforded greater protections at work so that they can support their families and enjoy a higher standard of living, because we are determined to end the race to the bottom. So I thank all members for contributing to this debate and the important work of the Business and Trade Select Committee. I look forward to continuing to work with them moving forward, and I commend these estimates to the House.
Liam Byrne to wind up.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Well, I think this has been an excellent debate, and I am incredibly grateful once again to the Backbench Committee for ensuring that we had some time to spend together debating some of the issues at stake here. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, we've heard some brilliant speeches from across the House, and in a way, my ambitions for this debate have been satisfied, because what I wanted to help ensure that we were able to do, both with the report that we wrote on the priorities of the business community, but also in securing this debate today, is that here in this chamber, here in this place, here in the corridors of power, we actually heard from business voices. And I just don't think that we give enough time, I don't think we give enough space, I don't think we give enough attention to actually hearing from business voices, hearing from the challenges in boardrooms and shop floors. And I think if we did that a little bit more, we would actually surprise ourselves by just seeing, hearing how much consensus there is in this country about the big moves in which we move forward. And we have to recognise, for those economic historians amongst us, that we are now at a moment in our history, and these moments occur about every 30 to 40 years, where we have a series of geopolitical shocks, where we then have a big and agonising debate about whether the country is in decline, whether it's all going to hell, or actually whether there is a different way forward, where we rally together and choose to build a different kind of sovereign capabilities together as a country. And inevitably, that then has consequences for the kind of state that emerges from that. And we went through this in the 1980s, and we went through it in the 1940s, and we went through it after World War I too. We're having to conduct that argument now at a moment when it is very clear that the United States, that great power, that great ally of ours, that built the multilateral system beginning in 1944 in San Francisco and then through to the end of World War II, it is quite clear now that America, in the words of Joseph Chamberlain, is a weary titan, no longer able to grasp the orb of its fate. And so we've got to recognise now that for those of us who support that multilateral rules-based order, we're going to have to step up. That is going to be difficult, it's going to be expensive, but it is going to bring new opportunities for business growth and, crucially, for our constituents to earn a good life.
Order. The questions necessary to dispose of proceedings stand over under Standing Order number 54. I am now required to put the questions necessary to dispose of proceedings on the estimates set down for consideration this day. The first question is the motion on the supplementary estimate for 2024-25 for the Department for Health and Social Care, which was debated today. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on the supplementary estimate for 2024-25 for the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, which was debated today. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to the question on the supplementary estimate for 2024-25 for the Department for Business and Trade, which was debated today. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. With the leave of the House, I will put the questions on motions 3 to 8 together. Minister to move formally. The question is motions 3 to 8 as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.